Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Rookie Card Collector 123 video. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at some original pre-war baseball Hall of Fame photographs. I believe all of these are Type 1 photographs. I picked all of these up at a recent Florida local card show as a collection about 2 weeks ago, and wanted to show them off. I haven't shown any original photos before on my channel here. These will also be available for sale as well when I do set up at card shows and on my eBay store. So just a little background on the photographs. I've been handling original photos for about 15 years now. I started doing these back in around 2010 when I was doing my Hall of Fame rookie collection, primarily for the 19th century guys, and then even more so the Negro League players. As many of you know, Negro League players never had any U.S. cards printed during their careers, during their active careers. So for me to get career contemporary items for many of these guys, the only option was to get something other than a card, which could be a photograph, could be a postcard, could be an image on a program or a scorecard or a broadside advertising piece. So through handling a lot of Negro League baseball items, I became pretty proficient in identifying photographs, what's a Type 1. There's also Type 2, 3, and 4 out there. These types was a system put together by PSA DNA. Henry Yee, back around 2010 or so, when PSA first started authenticating photographs, Henry Yee came up with this system. Basically, Type 1 photograph is going to be made from an original negative. It's got two criteria. It's made from an original negative when the photograph was taken by the photographer. And the second piece of criteria, it has to be produced and developed within 2 years or less of the time the photograph was taken. That qualifies it as a Type 1 photograph. The Type 1s are the most desirable, command the highest values, and have the best picture clarity, and of course would be on period photographic stock, being produced within 2 years of the image being taken. Type 2s have one of the qualities of the Type 1, but not the other one. So a Type 2 photograph would have been produced from the same original negative as a Type 1. So produced from the original negative gives the picture much better clarity, rather than if it was produced from a duplicate negative, because every time you take a picture of a picture, you lose some of the photo quality. So a Type 2 photograph is produced from the same original negative, so the clarity can be just as good as Type 1. But the difference is the Type 2 photograph was produced and developed more than 2 years after the photograph was taken. So 3 years or more afterwards from the original negative. So Type 2s tend to be very clear pictures, but not necessarily the same period photo stock was used. Type 3 is the next one. Type 3 also has one quality, but not the other from a Type 1. Type 3 is going to be produced from what's called a duplicate negative. Some people call it a second generation photo. But like the name implies, it's a photograph of a photograph, basically. So you lose some of the picture quality with a Type 3. But the other side to the Type 3 is the Type 3 photo was produced within 2 years of the time that the photo was taken. So it's going to give you the period photographic stock, which is missing on the Type 2s. But again, both of them are present in Type 1s, which is the most desirable. The fourth category for photographs is going to be Type 4. Type 4 photographs are produced from a duplicate negative, so the picture quality is not going to be as good as a Type 1 or a Type 2, which are the original negative. So produced from a duplicate negative, and it's also produced and developed more than 2 years after the image was taken. And there's really not a limit as far as how much longer it can be. It can be anywhere from 3 years plus all the way up until modern times. Once you get beyond, I would say the 70s to 80s, um, the value of photos, Type 4 photos, once you get beyond 70s to 80s production dates, really drops off and has very little value. It's really just the value of the image if somebody just wants to have the picture. The photograph has very little value, assuming that it's a photograph from, either pre-war or golden age, I would say. Obviously, if it's an 80s or a 90s image, like a Michael Jordan photograph, it'll have value. It couldn't be produced earlier than that. But anything that's produced as from an image that was either pre-war baseball, post-war, like golden age, 40s, 50s, 60s, like I said, up till around the 70s, that stuff will still have some kind of value as a Type 4. Once you get beyond 70s into 80s and more modern, that type of photograph has very little value. Now, some images, we talked originally, the Type 1s are the most desirable. That's the ones you'd like to have. Type 1s also bring the most money and are the most expensive. And Type 1 images of some particular subjects, like some of the Negro League players, some specific things like maybe Babe Ruth in a Red Sox pitching pose in a World Series game. There may not be a Type 1 of that image known to exist. But if you come across a Type 2 or a Type 3 or a Type 4, just because it's a Type 1 should not dismiss the opportunity to buy something like that. In certain cases like that, there can be significant value in a Type 2, a Type 3, or even a Type 4, assuming that it's not getting into the 80s and 90s or later. So there may be some Type 1 images that that are not known to exist anymore. The original negative could have been destroyed or lost over the years. There's no Type 1 image. The best we can find is a Type 4, which was produced maybe in the 40s or 50s or 60s, and that can have significant value. Same thing with the Type 2s, Type 3s, Type 4s. So I guess my point here is, even though the ones are the most desirable, you should not dismiss automatically the other three photograph types. There could be good value in all three of those, depending on the subject and other factors. If you've got a Willie Mays photograph and it's a Type 4 and it was produced in the 70s, and there's probably thousands of Willie Mays photographs and various, images from the Giants, San Francisco, New York, it's probably not going to have a lot of value. If you've got a Joe Jackson Type 4 autograph, well, his career only lasted about a decade. It was back in the 19 teens. If you've got a Type 4 image of his, and that was produced in the 60s or so, there probably is some sort of value there. So just a word to the wise, don't dismiss right off the bat anything that's not a Type 1. It is worthwhile to collect and look for the other types as well. So all that being said, a little background on photographs and Type 1s. As I mentioned, I believe what I have, or what I'm going to show you now, is probably all Type 1s. If we submitted these to PSA, I would assume many of them will get Type 1 designations. They may find or believe that there's a couple that might be 2s or 3s. I don't think there's any 4s really, but it's authenticating photographs, especially the dating part of it, is a very inexact science. If you think card grading is an inexact science, photographs is much more so. That 2-year parameter time frame that we talked about, trying to determine if something was produced 2 years or 3 years, that was that was taken in 1920s. It's really an inexact science. It's really PSA's best guess as to whether it was taken within the 2 year period or more than two, which could be three or more. So you got to kind of take things sort of with a grain of salt. Overall in the big picture, you're getting an idea. It's an original photo. It's from an original negative, and it was developed during the period that it was taken. If you look at it that way, rather than trying to narrow it down to the 2 year time period, um, and just look at it that way, don't try to be as exact as PSA was when they defined this. That they did the best they could with creating some sort of parameters. Prior to this, there was nothing. There was no type 1, type 2. It's not like a PSA 1 or a PSA 2 or a PSA 10 card grading system. This was all brand new, and the system they came up with at the time was the best they were able to assemble. So you have to kind of work with that. So without further ado, the first photograph I'm going to show is a 19. Now, some of these, I'm going to show you the backs also. Some of these have dates on the back, photographer stamps, newspaper stamp dates. Many of them do not. This one has a May 13th date, but not a year on it. So that doesn't help a whole lot. But this is an image of apparently at a outside or inside a New York Giants baseball game. This is John McGraw here in the sweater with the baseball cap on, manager for the Giants. And this is Christy Mathewson, his star pitcher, with the fedora and the winter coat. Appears to be a very cold day. It was probably taken in New York. You can see a lot of the fans and other people in the background. Everybody's dressed in heavy coats and hats. So my assumption is this was a 19 teens photo, probably sometime in the 1910 range. Could be a little before, could be a few years after. Like I said, pictures McGraw and Mathewson. The back of it has, not too sure. The back is not going to come in too clear. It's got a little bit of pencil writing, notations. It actually has Wilbert Robinson's name printed on the back. It appears that somebody inadvertently identified McGraw here as Wilbert Robinson. Robinson was the manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers at that time, and is not in the photo anywhere. So that was just, I guess, somebody's mistake in identification. And the back has a little bit of paper loss, was probably in a scrapbook at some point. You could see some of the spots of paper loss on it over there or over there. Excuse me. The photo probably measures about 6x8 or so. So not every photograph is specific 8x10. They're all different sizes, different cutouts. A lot of times these were used for newspaper articles, and they were photos in the paper. So depending on the size of the column that they had to work with, they would cut the photos down to a specific size in order to fit them in the periodical that they were trying to use. So again, McGraw, Mathewson, 1910s, 19 teens, and I believe type 1 photograph. Next one we're going to look at has a nice news stamp on the back, but it does not have a date on it. So this one is a late 1920s, early 1930s image, and trying to do my best to reduce the glare here. That's a little better, maybe. So you've got Connie Mack and Jimmy Fox, the Philadelphia Athletics from the late 20s, early 30s, sitting on the bench. Fox in uniform, Connie Mack in his business suit and straw hat, as he always wore on the field during Philadelphia games. So this is, like I said, late 20s, early 30s, around 1930 photograph, another type 1 image, I believe. This one on the back has the International News Photo stamp. And not sure how good this is coming out on screen. International News Photo is one of the biggest news service photographers from that era, from the 20s and 30s. So it's got a nice stamp on there. A lot of times those stamps will change over the years, the wording and the style, and also a lot of times you can date the photo more precisely based on the news stamp that appears on the back. It's got a couple of little pencil notations. It's got Jimmy Fox and Connie Mack. Somebody wrote on it, and it's probably too light to see. But really nice Type 1 image of Fox and Connie Mack sitting on the bench at a Philadelphia game. Next one we're going to look at. This one is a full team photo. This one is a full 8x10, I believe. And it was taken in San Antonio, Texas, in front of a hotel. This would have been a spring training, like a March spring training. Someone on the back identified it as spring 1915, but I believe it's spring 1916, the following year. The highlight of this photo is the individual pictured right here, which you probably can't see all that well, in the sweater, is Rogers Hornsby. 1916 was his first major league season. Hornsby would not come up to the Cardinals major league team in 1916 until later in the season. But he was in this team photo from the spring or from spring training that year, along with the rest of the St. Louis Cardinals ball club. Miller Huggins would be on this team also. I don't think I've spotted him specifically, been able to identify him in the photo. But it's 1916 Cardinals, also a Type 1 image. The back on this one has a little bit of issues with the staining. Somebody wrote Cardinals, Hot Wells Hotel, San Antonio, Texas, spring 1916, although I believe it's 1915, but I believe the correct date should be 1916. 1915, Hornsby was not with the Cardinals at all. So really nice team image, St. Louis Cardinals, 1916 spring training. And a super early Rogers Hornsby image. Next one we have here is a 1930s. I can't really pin down the date more specifically than that. This is Hank Greenberg with the Detroit Tigers, who just crossed home plate after scoring a run, it looks like, and the catcher and the umpire in the background. Looks like a young Greenberg. The Detroit uniform style would make it a 1930s sometime. The back of it, again, has the International News Photo Service stamp on it. Not the easiest to see on here. It identifies Hank Greenberg and has some staining, paper loss, and all on the back. No date stamp on there, so the best we can do is say it's 1930s. This one, I believe, is a Type 1 photo also. Next one we have is a early 1940s. I believe it's probably around 42 or 43. St. Louis Cardinals. You've got 5 Cardinals in the front of the dugout with a couple of gentlemen in dress attire. The gentleman all the way, the player all the way on the left is Stan Musial, very young Stan Musial, probably his second or third season with the Cardinals, along with 4 other teammates, which I don't have IDs for. This one is probably about a 7x9 image or so. Crystal clear photo, definitely a Type 1 image. This one has a United Press International stamp on the back on top, but it's very light. You probably can't see much of it. And it's got some paper from a caption, newspaper caption on the bottom there still attached, but the caption is gone. So 42, 43 Cardinals, very early Stan Musial image, and in front of the dugout. So super nice photo there. Next one we have is a portrait. So this is Lefty Grove, right around the same time frame as the Jimmy Fox Connie Mack image was taken, so circa 1930 or so. Um, this one has a couple of dates on the back, stamped 1950s, which means it was utilized for a 1950s probably newspaper or magazine story and was reused a couple of times. There's a few different stamps on the back here, mostly from Philadelphia area sources. It's also got Lefty Grove's name printed on the back, so somebody identified him on there. This is what the back looks like. Again, not too easy to make out the stuff on the back, but really nice Lefty Grove image. This one is not quite as clear as a few of the other ones. I would say that there's a possibility this could have been one of those duplicate negative situations that was produced in the 1930 time frame, but maybe from a duplicate rather than the original negative. But it could be a type 1 also. This is one of those where PSA probably is just making their best guess as to how many years in between and whether it was an original or a duplicate negative. Okay, next one is a very crystal clear photo. This is Dizzy Dean from the early to mid 1930s with the Cardinals. Both of these are smaller size. The Grove and the Dean are both similar. I would say they're probably about 5 by 7, roughly. So this has Dean with the Cardinals. It's got another Cardinal teammate. It looks like they're by the batting cage before a game. You can see the stadium in the background. This one has the Paul Fitzgerald stamp on the bottom. Paul Fitzgerald was a prominent photographer for baseball and during the 30s. Somebody wrote Dizzy Dean's name on the back also. So really nice, clear Dizzy Dean image here, probably early to mid 30s. Next one is really cool. This one is another Jimmy Fox, and you might recognize the image on this one. This one is actually the same, exact same image used to make the Warch Cigar Jimmy Fox baseball card from 1933. So this probably dates this image to right about 1933, maybe 32. This one was cut out by probably the newspaper or periodical source that was using this for a story, or it could have even been cut out for placement on the Warch cigar card when that was made. So it's a die cut. It's got cutout edges. It actually has a small hole here in between his body and his arms holding the bat, which is kind of interesting. Um, the whole die cut piece is intact, though. It would be easy for example, for a little piece of the bat here on top to be broken off or something like that. But the entire image is intact. This one is probably about 3 by 5, pretty close to like a postcard size image. The back has Fox. It has a few markings on it, which would relate to how the newspaper service was using it for the column in the paper. This one is stamped American News Service Department, it looks like, on the very bottom. And really interesting Warch cigar image of Jimmy Fox. Next one we're going to look at is got two more Hall of Famers. This one has, in the Dodger uniform, is Hack Wilson a little bit later in his career. And the Cardinal uniform is Dazzy Vance, the Hall of Fame pitcher. So these two probably hanging out before a Cardinal Dodger game. This would have been in the 1930s. And this one actually has a date stamp on the back of 5/2/33. So this one could be pinned down to an exact date, May 1933. This one definitely a type 1 photo, produced within 2 years of that 33 photograph date and original negative. A really nice image of the two Hall of Famers there. Back, this one actually has the newspaper clipping, the news service clipping with the info. That's basically what would print in the paper alongside the photograph. And then underneath on the bottom below that is the AP Wide World photo stamp. They're the one that actually took the photograph. So nice 1933 Dazzy Vance and Hack Wilson. Next one we're going to look at is two more Hall of Famers paired together. This is the Cardinal uniform, Jim Bottomley. And in the Philadelphia Athletic uniform is the catcher, Mickey Cochran. Two more Hall of Famers. Bottomley's got his bat there and looks like they're shaking hands. Probably before a game, probably a Cardinals Athletics. I believe they played in one of the late 20s, early 30s World Series. So this is probably right before a World Series game. The back has a reference to a newspaper article. Mickey Cochran's name is circled on there. It's got a 1931 stamp on it, September 29th, 1931. So that's probably the 31 World Series. I haven't checked, but it's probably an Athletics Cardinals World Series. So a really cool image of Cochran and Jim Bottomley. Next one we have is, this one's the only one that's a post-war photo, I believe, out of what I have here to show. This one is a 50s Luis Aparicio and Minnie Minoso, teammates with the Chicago White Sox. Gentleman in the middle is a military personnel guy. And the photo is a little light and hard to see here, but it's actually autographed with an inscription here. It was actually autographed by the gentleman in the military attire. I'm not sure what his significance was, but they're both pictured in baseball stadium. Looks like a White Sox game in front of the dugout fence there. And Minoso and Aparicio. And the back on this one is completely blank. But crystal clear photo, 1950s, and a type 1 would have been made from the original negative there. Next one we're going to look at is a Phil Rizzuto, New York Yankees. This one has a lot of newspaper markings or photographer markings. This would help with them placing it in a magazine or newspaper column. The measurements and the space they had and where the photo would fit. So this is Phil Rizzuto. I would say early 40s, could be around 41 or so. Pretty close to his rookie season. It's got a lot of fans in the background there. It appears to be sort of a makeshift field. So I'm guessing this is probably more like a spring training type game. The back doesn't identify any date or place or anything. It just has Phil Rizzuto's name printed on the top. Otherwise, the back is blank. It just has a number 100 in the corner. Don't know what the significance of the 100 is. So a nice Phil Rizzuto image there. And the last one we're going to look at today is another Stan Musial. We saw him before with a few teammates. This looks like a much later in his career Stan Musial. This one is die cut, like the Jimmy Fox was that was used for the Warch cigar. I don't know that this image was used on any specific card, baseball card, but it's die cut. It's a real nice image of Stan, probably closer to 1960 or so. The back is blank with just a little black markings or staining from over the years. But, real nice image, probably from the original negative. And could be within that 2 year time frame to make it a type 1. It could be more than a 2 year time frame. I would guess it probably is a type 1. So Stan Musial die cut from probably around 1960. So that's going to wrap up today's episode for the original photograph showing. Like I said, almost all of these would probably be given a Type 1 designation by PSA. If they were submitted, I went over the Type 2, 3, and 4, what the differences are. And like I said, these are all going to be available for sale at card shows I set up at. If you're interested in anything that you saw today, you want to reach out to me. My email address is going to be V like in Victor, and then Guerrero, Guerrero, and then B as in boy, at yahoo.com. If there's anything there you saw that you might be interested in. So anyway, hope you enjoyed all the photos. Pretty unique experience. Hope you guys have a great day, and I'll catch you on the next one.